Okay, so in today's class, let us see built-in attributes and built-in functions for a class. So, what do you mean by built-in attributes and built-in functions for a class? First, let us discuss about built-in attributes. So, for every class, Python creates some built-in, allows us to access the attributes uh, using some built-in attributes for a class. You need not create them, they are built-in. The name itself is built-in, right? So they are automatically available for every class that you define in your Python program. So let us see first what are those built-in attributes and what is their purpose with the help of a program. And then later after that we'll also see built-in functions. They are not actually part of, they are not methods, they are functions only. Okay, so if you're using the term methods, it refers to a function which is part of a class. Okay, then we have to use the term method for that function. But if a function does not use any object to call that that function, we can simply call it as a function. But if a function requires an object to call that function, it is called as a method. Okay, so we'll discuss these two topics first, and then we'll also discuss about the destructor method. Okay, so this method is called as del. This can be defined as del method, just like init method, which is called as a constructor. We have a method called del method, double underscore del double underscore and parenthesis. So this also will receive a self argument, just like init method receives. So this is called what? This is nothing but destructor. Init method is called as constructor. Now this is called as destructor. So we'll discuss these three topics today. So first we'll start with built-in attributes. We'll see a program, how to use those, what are those built-in attributes and how to use them in our program, so that we'll get some information related to the class, right? So we'll begin with built-in attributes. So first let me start with an example program. This contains a program uh, which contains a class. So we are defining a class called student, and after the student class definition begins, I'm using this comment here. This is what is this called as? This is called as docstring, right? So three double quotes opened, and then in between you are writing some string content and then closing the three double quotes. So anything between these three double quotes opened and closed is nothing but called as docstring. So we have discussed about it long back, right? So I'm using a docstring here to mention that this class is going to use some built-in class attributes. So here in this class I'm defining the constructor method here. So this is the constructor method. It receives three parameters: name, role and age. So we are creating three object variables: self.name, self.role, self.age, and assigning the parameter name, role, age values to this object variables. So that is what you are doing with init method. Then I'm defining another method called display underscore details. This does not receive any parameter, it has only self. So what is this going to do is, it is simply going to display the name, uh, roll number and age of that particular student. Then after the class I am creating an object for the student, yes, and I'm initializing that object with the name of the student as Vinay and roll number as 540 and age as 21. Okay, so now this is simple class. We have not yet used any built-in class attributes till here. So from now onwards we are going to use the rest of the program, we are going to use those built-in class attributes. So let us see the first one. So I kept this in comment. So look at these three lines. So the first built-in class attribute is doc. So it is double underscore doc double underscore. So what are attributes? Attributes are nothing but the method, the variables that we create in a class, that is object variables that we create, or class variables that you create, static variables that you create. So three types of variables you can create in a class, right? So all these variables you can we can call them as attributes. In Python we call them as attributes, right? So you can have a built-in attribute for a class called double underscore doc double underscore. So what is the purpose of this doc attribute? So what is this going to do? So it is mentioned here, the attribute gives the class documentation string if specified. In case the documentation string is not specified, then the attribute returns none. Is there a documentation string created in our program in the class? So I've created this doc string inside the class definition, right? After the class definition started here, inside the class definition I've created this doc string built-in class attributes, right? So what is this doc attribute going to have is, it is going to store this doc string that we created in the class. And when you use this doc attribute in a print statement, it will return what, whatever doc string you have given inside the class student, that will be returned. If there is no doc string, then it will return none, right? Then how to access this doc attribute outside the class means, because it is a built-in class attribute, you need not create that attribute. It is already there, and automatically it is going to store the doc string that you're going to define inside the class, inside any class. So if you already created an object for that class, then using that object you can directly access that doc attribute. So if you observe this print statement, I am calling this doc attribute, I am accessing this doc attribute using the object s, which is nothing but the object for class student. So s dot double underscore doc double underscore. So this is going to print what, whatever you have given in the doc string, that is built in class attributes, that will be returned. So that will be displayed by the print statement. So this is the first built-in class attribute. Then coming to the next one, the second one, it is dict double underscore dict double underscore. Okay, so what is this attribute going to do is, this attribute gives a dictionary containing the class or objects namespace in the sense, whatever variables you created in that class and whatever methods you created, so what are their names, all these things will be stored in the form of a dictionary by this dict attribute, right? So you can access this value of this dictionary by simply using the object of that class and dot followed by the attribute name is double underscore dict double underscore. So this is going to print all the names of all the variables that you created in the class student and also the methods, right? Then the next one is name. So you can access this dict using either class name as well as object name. Instead of s, I can use the class name also directly there. Okay. Then coming to the third attribute, it is double underscore name double underscore. So what is this going to return? It is going to return the name of the class. So if I print student dot double underscore name double underscore, what is the name of the class? Student, right? So it is going to print the same. Then coming to the next one, double underscore module. Double underscore module. So this one will return the name of the module in which the class student is defined. In our example, the class name is student, right? So what is the name of the module that I created? So the name of the file is attributes.py, right? So when I print s dot double underscore module double underscore, this is going to print what? Attributes.py, right? So this is double module attribute. And then next one is the last one, basis. So what is this going to do? This will be used only when inheritance is used. Okay, so used in inheritance to return the base class in the order of their occurrence in the base class list. If the student class has any base class, then it will return that base class in whichever order they are listed in the base class list in your program. So that order it will display. So let us run this program and see the output, then you'll understand, you'll have a better understanding on this. So look at the output. First, what we have printed s dot double underscore doc double underscore. So that is you are accessing the value of doc attribute of the class. So what is this going to return? The doc string, any doc string that is defined in the class. So did we define any doc string here? Yes, we have defined built-in class attributes, right? So that will be returned. So that will be the first line of the output, built-in class attributes. This is the doc string, right? Then what is the next attribute we are accessing? We are accessing s dot dict. So this is going to return a dictionary containing class or objects namespace. So let us see the various methods and variables that are part of this class. So you have self dot name, self dot role, self dot age, right? So you have name, uh, role and age. So these are the three object variables that you have, right? And this init is a constructor. So it is not going to return the method, but it is going to return only the variables, class variables or object variables or static variables. But we don't have other type of variables. We have only object variables. So all those variables and their names are returned, their values are returned in the form of a dictionary. So for name variable, what I have assigned Vinay, and for roll number 540 and age 21. So that is returned in the form of a dictionary here, right? So this is how dict attribute can be used. So it is going to return all the namespace of all the different types of variables, object variable, class variables and static variables, all those variables and their values. So the name of those variables will be key and the value will be the value in the dictionary. So a dictionary is nothing but a ordered pair of key value pairs, right? Ordered set of key value pairs, right? So the key will be the name of the variable and value will be the value that is stored in that variable. So that is what the dict attribute going to do. So then the name attribute, what is it going to return? It is going to return the name of the class. So what is the name of the class? Student. So that is written in the third print statement. Then so what is what is the module attribute going to return? It is going to return the name of the module in which the class the object is defined. So it is just going to give the main module. So double underscore main double underscore. So we have defined in attributes.py class, but we have something called main module in Python. So when you have concepts of modules, we have imported modules, right, from one program, from one module to another module. So here uh, we are not creating this as a module and then we'll first create a module. This is, for example, say module, and these functions that we created here can be accessed in some other module, right? in some other module I can import this module and access it, right? So in whichever module you are importing other modules, they are not considered as the main module. Whichever module you are importing, that is considered as a main module. So this is the main module, so that's why it is displaying the module as main. Okay, double underscore main double underscore. Then look at the next output, next print statement. It is displaying student dot basis. So you don't have any base classes for the student class. So how this is going to return? All the base class list, right? So do you have any base class and derived class in our program? We don't have. We are not at all using inheritance, right? So when you don't use any inheritance, so this is just going to display a class object. That's it. With what you are calling using class name, right? Student dot basis. So let me remove this and use object yes here, and then so when I try to use s object there, I'm getting an error, s dot basis. So when you want to access this attribute basis, you have to use the name of the class directly. You cannot use the object of the class. But coming to other attributes, if you observe uh, how I'm calling this dict attribute, I'm using the object of the class student, that is yes. Even in doc also I'm using yes, right? I didn't use the name of the class. And coming to the name attribute, I'm using the class name. I'm not using object here, right? So let me remove this s here and give student, and then uh, here instead of student I'll try to give s here. So you're getting there also error. So what you must understand is the name attribute and the basis attribute must be used only with the name of the class, like this. They can be accessed with the name of the class. But coming to the remaining three attributes, doc attribute, dict attribute and module attribute, you can use the object name, right? And here instead of s for dictionary, let me use student class name. So what is it returning? So it is returning a dictionary containing everything, the module and its name as value, right? So module is one key, its value is, the module name is the main module, right? Then you have doc attribute, built-in class attributes, then you have init method, right? Then you have display method, display details method, then you have a function, uh, and you also have dict dictionary, that built-in attributes, dict and namespace, all those are also displayed here. When we used object s, are we getting this? We are getting only object variable names. We are getting only object variable names, right? Name Vinay, roll number 540, age 21. But when we use the name of the class, so class will just have the code on built-in class attributes called doc attribute, dict attribute, right? All these attributes, and apart from that you'll also have the constructor method in it, and any other method that is defined, all those methods will be mentioned. So this is going to display all those attributes and method names and constructor names in the form of a dictionary. So the key will be nothing but the name of the attribute or name of the method or the name of the module, and the value will be the name of the module or the name of the method, or name of the value of the attribute. And for methods, it will simply display the memory location. It will simply display the memory location. You are able to see 0x00. So this is uh, hexadecimal representation of that memory. Okay, when you have 0x preceding by a numerical memory location value, it is nothing but a hexadecimal representation. So you will have all the details of that uh, class if you use a class name. Instead if you use object name, then you will get only the object variables. So you are permitted to use object here for dict attribute, but you are not, but coming to the basis, you are not permitted, and even for name also you are not permitted, because the name attribute itself is used to return the name of the class. So you cannot use object name there, you have to use the name of the class. And module attribute, I can use name of the class. Let us see, this will work fine because both are allowed. Either you can use the class name or object, even it is mentioned in the comment section. The attribute gives the name of the module in which the class or the object is defined. So you can use both class as well as object here. Okay, but here for this basis I didn't mention class or object, right? So you have to use it only for class. And even this one, the name attribute, also you have to use it only for class. And dict attribute, you can use both class or object, it is mentioned here in the comment. And doc attribute, the attribute gives the class documentation string if specified. In case the documentation is not specified, then the attribute returns none. So let us use class name here instead of object name. This will work. You can use both class name as well as attribute name, sorry, object name. Okay, so you can use object name also. Only for which it is not permitted to use object name, the name attribute and the basis attribute. Okay, understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so now let us see uh, built-in methods or built-in functions that are related to a class. So just like there are built-in attributes of a class, you can also have built-in functions for a class. So these are the functions. You look at the comment in the first line. So you're going to see these four functions that will be used in this program. Has attr, which stands for has attribute, get attr, which stands for get attribute, set attr, which stands for set attribute, and del attr, which stands for delete attribute. So what is the purpose of has attribute means this function can be used or can be called upon an object of a class, so that and find out whether a particular attribute is created and defined in that particular class or not, right? Then coming to get attribute will be used to retrieve the value of the attribute of a class. So if you want to know the value of an attribute of a class, say for example in this class we have defined attributes CSE is equal to 240. So if you want to know this attribute value, then you can call get attribute method, sorry, function. It is not called as method, it is a function, and pass this attribute name as value as parameter. Then it will return the value of that attribute, that is 240, right? Then set attribute is used to create a new attribute or modify an attribute value. If there is an attribute value say 240, now I want to modify it to some 360, Then I can call this set attribute method and mention two parameters. The first parameter is the name of the attribute which you want to modify, and the value, the new value which you want to pass. Okay. uh, then del attribute, this is going to delete a particular attribute from the class. So if I want to delete say AI attribute, so I have to pass AI as parameter to this del attribute. So this is the purpose of all these four functions. Has attribute will return a boolean value whether it is true or false. That means whether if that attribute is existing in a class or not. If it is existing, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. Get attribute will return the value of an attribute. Set attribute will be setting the value of an attribute, that is modify or create new one. Del attribute will be deleting an attribute. So let us see this program. We are defining a class called VJIT, and in this class these are the attributes we are creating: CSE, ECE, ME, IT, EEE, CE, and AI. These are all the branch names in shortcut. So I'm storing the intake of a particular branch in that college VJIT. So every year you will be performing admissions, right? So during those admissions, how many maximum students are allowed for every branch? That is nothing but intake. We call it as intake of the branch. So for CSC, the maximum number of students who can get admission will be 240. For ECE also 240. For mechanical is also 240. For IT it is 60. Earlier it is 60. Now it is increased to 180 now last year. So triple E is 120. Civil engineering is 120, and artificial intelligence is 60. So I'm storing these intake values in the form of variables or attributes in this class called VJIT. Then I'm defining a method called display method with no parameter except the cell. Then I'm displaying all the intakes of various branches using the print statement. College name Vidya Jyoti Institute of Technology. Print CSC intake as 240, ECA intake as 240, ME intake as 240, IT intake as 60, triple E intake as 120, and then civil engineering as 120 and AI as 60. So after creating this class like this, I'm creating an object for this class OB1. OB1 is equal to VJIT constructor, right? Then in the next statement, what I'm doing is using a print statement, I'm displaying intake of civil engineering is, and how to access the intake value. We have created intake for civil engineering as attribute called CE, whose value is set to 120, right? So now if I want to retrieve that value, I can use the get attribute method. So this get attribute method has three parameters. The first parameter is nothing but the object of the class in which you want to find out whether an attribute is created or not, right? That is retrieve that value of an attribute in whichever class it is defined. That class object you have to pass as first parameter, and second parameter must be the name of the attribute. So what is the name of the attribute? CE. So you need to mention CE in double quotes, right? Always attribute name will be a string, so specify it in double quotes, comma. The third parameter is a default parameter. If by any reason if that attribute is not existing, then it will not return any value, right? That method. So what is the default value that must be returned if that attribute does not exist? That you can mention here using 0, using the third parameter. So I mentioned 0 here. So if that attribute C is not existing in the class, then it is going to return 0. If it is existing, whatever is the value of that attribute, that will be returned. Because it is existing, it will return 120. If it is not existing, then it will return 0. If you don't mention this third parameter, because it is optional, you may or may not use it. So if you observe in the next line, I use the same get attribute method, but I didn't mention the third parameter here. So in this case, it will generate an exception, that is an error. So that's why I put this print statement in comment. So intake of chemical engineering. So there is no branch called chemical engineering in VJT class. So if you try to uh, retrieve the value of CHE, an attribute in the class, is there an attribute called CHE defined in our class? There is no CHE attribute. There is CE. There is no CHE, right? So, and you didn't mention the default value, so this is going to generate a error. So instead of generating an error, if you specify some default value like this, then you'll not get any error. So let us see after execution how it works, that one. So then the next statement uses has attribute method function. So don't use the term method here, use the term function, because all these are built-in functions. And observe how they are called. We are not using any object to call these attributes, these functions. When do we use an object to call methods, call functions? If those functions are defined inside a class, then we require an object to access them. But if they are not defined inside a class but outside a class, then you don't require an object of to call them, right? So if you observe has attribute or get attribute, both of them are called without any object, so they are not methods, they are simply functions. So what is has attribute function going to do? It is going to check whether a particular attribute is defined in a class or not. So it receives two parameters. First parameter is the name of the uh, object, sorry, that is object of the class in which you want to find out whether an attribute is present or not. Then the second parameter is the name of the attribute. You have to always specify the name of an attribute in double quotes because it is a string. So this is going to return what? Either true or false. If it is present, it is going to return true, otherwise it is going to return false. Then look at the next print statement. It is displaying intake of IT. So again here also I'm using get attribute method. So the name of the object of the class in which you are searching is ob1, and attribute name is IT. So you have attribute name IT, so this is going to return 60. But after that, what I am doing is I'm using set attribute method. So what is the purpose of set attribute function? It is going to modify the existing value or create a new attribute, right? So what I am doing here is uh, the first parameter, it receives three parameters. First parameter is the object of the class in which you're trying to create or modify the attribute, and second parameter is name, is nothing but the name of the attribute. As usual, it has to be specified in the double quote. And third parameter is the either the new value, or if you are creating a new attribute, then that is the first value that you are assigning. Because IT is already there, it is being modified. So what is the value of IT attribute? 60, right? So now I am modifying it to 180 by using the same set attribute method. So the purpose of set attribute is two purposes. One is, if the attribute already exists, you can modify it by mentioning the third parameter, which is nothing but the new value for the existing attribute. And if it is not existing, then this attribute with whatever name you mentioned in the second parameter, this will be created newly and a value will be assigned, and that value is nothing but the third parameter, right? Then after that, what I am doing is I am displaying the intake of IT after update and calling get attribute method and passing ob1 comma IT. And then look at the next line. Again I'm using set attribute function. So for this time, what I am passing as the first parameter is ob1, the same class object. Second parameter is the attribute name. There is no metallurgical engineering attribute in our VJIT, right? So and third parameter I'm giving 60. So what is this function going to do now? It is going to create a new attribute because it is not existing already. So it is going to create new attribute. If it is existing, it is going to modify it. If it is not existing, it is going to create it, right? So with a value 60, then I'm printing that attribute value, that is intake of metallurgical engineering, is by calling get attribute method function. First parameter is the object ob1 and second parameter is the attribute name. So this is going to return 60. Then the last function is del attribute function, delete attribute function. So I'm calling this delete attribute function, and for this you have to pass two parameters. First parameter is the object of the class in which you are trying to delete a particular attribute, and then second parameter is the name of the attribute which you want to delete, right? So after deleting, if you try to access, what will happen? The get attribute function, what is it going to return? It is going to return an error, right? So intake of metallurgical engineering is get attribute of ob1 comma meta engineering. So let us run this program and verify the output. So you observe we didn't call this display method using that object ob1. So this display method will not be executed. As a result, this will not be displayed. These values will not be displayed, right? But you are making only call to the only these print statements will be executed because you are not making call to the display method, right? So first print statement outside the class is intake of civil engineering, right? So what is this returning? 120. So we have done the same thing. See, civil engineering intake is 120. So it is displaying output as 120. Then the second print statement, this will be ignored because you put in comment. The next print statement has attribute, right? So do you have an attribute called AE? Do you have AE? You have AI, you don't have AE, right? Aeronautical engineering. So this is going to return false. So the second line of the output is false. Then what you're doing next in the next print statement, you're retrieving the intake of IT by calling get attribute method function. So it will display 60 because initially its value is 60. Then you are setting that uh, setting a new sorry you are setting the attribute IT with a new value 180. Then again you are printing it. So intake of IT after update is 180. The next line of output will be displaying this one. Then after that you are creating a new attribute called metallurgical engineering METENG and assigning a value 60 and then printing it by calling get attribute function. So that will display intake of metallurgical engineering is 60, right? Then after that what I am doing, I am deleting the attribute metallurgical engineering. Then I am trying to access its value by calling get attribute. Once it is deleted, so you will get an error, right? So what is error? Attribute error. VJT object has no attribute metallurgical engineering, and it is this the error is error occurs in which line? Line number 30. So this is line number 30. You are able to see the line number 30, right? So if I put this in comment, then this will not happen. So understood?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have seen built-in class attributes, and now we have seen built-in class functions. Built-in functions for class, you have to say. You cannot say they are members of class. You can use these functions for any class in your program. You could create as many classes as you want, and in all those classes, if you want to access, then. So what is the advantage of these functions is, if you have has attribute function, for example, you know about a predefined class that is defined in Python, but you don't know what are the attributes defined in that class, and you would like to know what are the attributes defined in that class. So you can call this has attribute function and pass object of that particular class. You can create an object for that class and pass that object as a first parameter, and specify the name of an attribute as a second parameter. Then you will know about whether it exists or not, right? So if you know about a particular attribute but you don't know what value is assigned for that, then you can know about it by using get attribute function, right? The remaining ones we cannot use on predefined classes because if you delete or modify a predefined class, uh, they will be lost permanently and they will not be available for everyone, right? So you cannot use them for predefined classes. So always try to use them using uh, user defined classes only. Don't use them for predefined classes. You must have defined many number of classes in your program. You are developing an application, for example. You know some of the attributes exist, but you exactly do not know whether they exist or not in that class. So if you want to find out whether they exist or not, then you can use these predefined functions to find out whether they exist or not. If they exist, what is their value? If you want to modify their value, you can modify them, their value directly using these functions. If you want to delete them, you can delete them, right? So you need not modify the program and remove that attribute from your program uh, manually. Instead of that, you can write a code simply and execute it, and you can do this even in interactive mode of your Python, right? You need not open that program. So simply import that program, import that module, and in a single file, and then try to use these functions to uh, modify them or retrieve their values or check whether these values are present or not using these functions. Fine. Then we'll see one more small concept called destructor method or delete method. What is the purpose of this del method or destructor method is, you know about garbage collection in Java. So you have the same concept even in Python, because even Python is also an object oriented programming approach. So what is garbage collection means? Most of the object oriented programming like languages provide this mechanism. What is garbage collection means? You have a software entity which is part of your software package, whether it is JDK for Java or Python, whatever it is. You will have a software entity part of this Python software as well as Java software. What is their responsibility is to delete or deallocate the memory that has been allocated to an object of a class or variable or something, uh, when it is no longer needed in your program. That means it will check whether that particular object, when it is created, from the time it is created, is it being accessed or not, used or not in our program. So if it is not being used in the near future, then it may delete that memory, that is deallocate that memory that is allocated to that variable. So this cleaning up process is called as garbage collection. If it is no longer used in your program in the coming future, and it is not used for some time in your program, then it is automatically going to be deleted. So that process is done by a software entity that is called as garbage collector, and the process of removing all these things is called as garbage collection. So you'll have garbage collection in object oriented programming languages. If it is in C language, uh, the memory will be deallocated once the program terminates. But as long as the program does not terminate, the memory that is allocated to the variables in the program will still be held by those variables until you terminate. But in object oriented programming, even before you terminate your program, if if your garbage collector feels that this variable or object is not being used for over the past and it is not going to be used in the future, then it automatically deletes that object and deallocates the memory that is already allocated at the beginning of the execution of the program, right? So that is the process, that is the responsibility of the garbage collector, and that responsibility, when it is performed, it is called as garbage collection. So uh, let us put that garbage collection aside. Now let us come back to the destructor method that can be defined in a class. Just like you can define a constructor method. What is the meaning of constructor? The constructor actually what it does is it is going to create those object variables and all other variables and allocate memory to them, all of them. So that's why we use the term constructor. It is going to create them. So that is why we use the term constructor. And coming to the destructor, it is going to destroy them. So that's why we call them as we call this method as destructor. So the method must be defined as double underscore del double underscore. Just like for init method, you have double preceding and uh, preceding double underscore, and you also have post double underscore after init method name, right? So in the same way, you have to use the same double underscore before and after the name of the method del here. This also receives one self parameter. A constructor may receive self as well as any other objects. It depends upon the user's wish. So what is this del method going to do means this method will be automatically uh, executed when your object that you created for this class is about to be deleted. Before the object is deleted, if you try to delete an object for a class by using the del keyword, so in the previous program we have used the del keyword to delete the object ob1. We have used a del attribute, right? So and we have used del keyword also in when we were using lists and dictionaries to delete a particular item of a list or a key value pair of a dictionary, right? So in the same way, a del keyword can be used to delete an attribute or delete an object of a class also. Fine. So when you try to delete an object for this class, then before the deletion takes place, this del method will be called. So how will you know whether this del method is called or not? You write any some print statements in this method and you try to delete an object for this class del demo. Then before that the object is destroyed, this method will be automatically called. You need not make any call. Just like init method, when you create an object for that class, automatically the init method will be executed, right? And before you delete your when you are about to delete an object for the class, then automatically this del method will be executed. So del is called as destructor and init is called as constructor. Okay, you don't have this destructor concept in Java. Automatically the Java garbage collection will happen. Even you don't use this del method, automatically it will happen, right? But in Python you have that facility. Explicitly in your program you can define a del method, and then you try to delete an object, then automatically that will be done. Even if you don't define also, that will be anyhow done, right? But Java, what it does is it will not give that scope for the user because of security. It will not give the scope for the user to write in his program to delete any object and the memory allocated to that object for security reason. But Python, what it does automatically, it'll also do just like Java does, but it'll also give a facility for the user to delete define the delete method and destroy the object explicitly in the program. Okay, that's the difference between Java and Python destruction or garbage collection. So here the del method, when it is used, you don't require garbage collector or garbage collection process. But when you don't define this del method, then you require garbage collection. So if you don't define this del method, the garbage collector that you have in Python will automatically do that activity. But if you define this del method, then this del method will do that activity. Okay, so this is all going to happen in the background. It will not be visible to us. The only thing that we can notice is whether this del method is executed or not, and when it will be executed, only when you are about to delete that object of that particular class in which this del method is defined, right? So what is the name of the class? Del demo. So if you have created an object for this del demo class, and if you try to delete that object later in some part of your program, then before you delete that, this method del method will be executed. So to prove that this method is executed before the object is destroyed, I am writing some print statements here by displaying message inside del, and I am accessing the variable var value and the variable a and b values like this. So what I am doing here, I am creating object for del demo and passing 10 comma 20 as parameters. So those 10, 20 will be assigned to the object variables a and b respectively, and you have another variable, class variable, uh, called 10. Its value is created defined as 10, and I'm making a call to the display method. The display method, what it does is it will display the values of a and b and the var variable, right? Then so look at this statement. I'm printing the id of object. So because object has been created, memory will be allocated for that object. So how do you know the memory location of that object? By calling the predefined function called id, which we have used long back, right? So in this print statement, I'm displaying the id of ob by calling the id function and passing ob as parameter to that. So it will return the memory location, starting memory location of this object. Then I am displaying a simple hello message. This is just for formality. And then I'm accessing the variable a, object variable a value by using that object ob. In the next statement, I am deleting the ob object. So now if I try to print the id of the ob, because this del method has been called, uh, what will happen? The memory allocated for that ob will be destroyed. So as a result, now this will generate an error because it has been destroyed, no longer available. Object is no longer available, right? So I'll not be able to make a call to any methods, or I'll not be able to access any members of the class after this statement, right? So that you can see it in the output of the program. See, first we are displaying, by calling the display method, you're displaying a value 10, b value 20, and var value as 10. Then the memory location of the object is displayed, id of ob as this value. Then a hello message, and then again the var value 10 is displayed. And you destroyed the, that means you deleted the object ob by using the del keyword. So what is happening? uh, Before that, immediately what will happen, the del method will be automatically called. So what is there in del method? You have these statements inside del, and the var value and a value and b value, so these are printed. So after that, you are trying to print the id value of ob. You have a name error generated. Name ob is not defined because it is no longer available, it is destroyed, right? So this is del method, and how to use the del method in your program when you are using classes. Okay, so understood?
Yes, sir.